Welcome guys. So for this video we are going to be looking at full outer join. We are done with the right join, left join and inner join. So for this video we'll look at full outer join and we'll look at self join and outer join. So for full outer join, a full outer join is the combination of the left outer join and the right outer join. Sqlalchemy does not directly support full outer join like it does right and left joins, because different SQL databases implement full outer joins differently, and some do not even support full outer join natively. So it makes it difficult to provide a one-size-fits-all approach for all the different SQL databases. We can only be able to achieve a full outer join by doing it manually. When I say doing it manually, I mean by doing it using the union function or the union underscore all function to combine the left and right joins. So let's look at how we can do this. Also note that full outer joins are not performance friendly, especially on large datasets. So if you're just joining me, these are what you need to install: Sqlalchemy, Python, env and MySQL connector Python, and we have our DB engine open here where we are importing what we need for the table. We are creating connection string, we are getting the password and so on from the env variables, and we are creating an engine. For SQL, we are using MySQL, and we've created 3 tables: users, accounts and address. So we are going to drop the table and create the table again. So for us to do that, and let me not forget, I've modified the foreign key constraints here. I'm setting on delete to set null so that I can be able to demonstrate what I need to demonstrate for this full outer join. And then if we go to batch insertion, once we are done creating and dropping and recreating the tables, we are going to add some values to users, accounts and address. So if you do not wish to type this out, it's going to be, there's a link to the GitHub repo in the description section, so you can just go there and copy it. So I'm going to open my terminal and I'm inside my virtual environment. So I'm going to run Python 3 minus m, and I'm inside the code.batch insertion. Let me just cd into core and run this batch insertion. Let me remove the nullable false constraint from the foreign key, which I forgot to do before. I'll remove it and we can be able to create the tables. And we've successfully created the tables and added the data into the tables. I'm going to close them. And I'm going to close my terminal, and I'm going to open the extension. This extension that we have here. If you're just joining us, you can copy the name and search in the extension box and you can install it. And once you install it, you can click on this plus icon, which is going to bring you up to where you're going to add your username, your password, your database name. You click on save and then click on connect, which is going to connect you, and you can be able to see it up here. If you click on it, you should be able to see all the tables you have. And I'm going to reload this, which should give us the data. So you can be able to visualize and even manually add tables. Again, add the H1 and then I'll say Control S, which is going to save it. So Let's continue to full outer join. So I'm going to say from DB engine import. So I'm going to use the wildcard import, and for full outer join we need Sqlalchemy. We need to import the union or from Sqlalchemy. So just like I said, for us to do a full outer join, we have to combine the left join and the right join. If you've been following up from the previous videos, which I'm going to leave in the description section, you should know that first you're going to do the left join. Should I call it left statement? We are going to say select, and then we pass in the table names or the columns that we want to select. So I'm going to select users.column.id and users.column.name, and then I'm also going to select accounts.column.type, and then we are going to say each channel we select from, and then inside this select from we are going to pass the table that is going to be on the left, which is users, and then we say users.outer join, and then inside this outer join function we are going to pass in the table for the right, and then we can decide to add the on clause, which is the foreign key relationship, and I think there is no need for me to add this, not to make this longer. And then we are going to do the same for the right one. I call this right statement, and we are going to do the same thing. Say select, and then we are going to select users.column.id, users.column.name, and accounts.column.type. And the same thing we say select from. We say select from, and this time we pass in the table at the right because we are selecting for doing a right join this time. So I'm typing right. We say accounts dot outer join, or we can just use join. We say account dot join, then we pass in the table at the left, which is users, and then we set the flag, which is outer, which also means that we are performing a right outer join. So now that we've created the left and right statement, so we are going to combine the results of the left and right outer join using the union or, and then we are going to set it as a subquery because both joins together is not the main query. Union or and the subquery function is combined. We will turn the left and right joins into a single query. So I'm going to call this full outer join subquery, and I'm going to use the union or that we imported up here, and then I'm going to pass in the left join, which should be on the left statement, and then I'll pass in the right statement, and then we say dot subquery to turn it to a subquery because it's, and then we are going to use the select function to turn this subquery into its own query, and then we call the distinct function on it to make sure no duplicates are returned. So I'm going to call this full outer join statement, and I'm going to use select, and inside there we pass in the full outer join subquery, and then we call distinct on it to avoid repetition of or duplicate of data. And then just so you know, in Sqlalchemy, I think from 1.4 and lower, the subquery was not used. It was done like this, using, instead of using the subquery, the way it was done was something like this: dot select, and then dot links thing. If you do this, it's going to work, but is doing this is deprecated. So let's continue. So we are going to execute the combine statement by saying with my SQL engine, which we created in the other file, and we say that connect as con, and then I'm going to set this as result, and I'll say con dot execute, and I'm going to pass in the full outer join statement, and we are going to print this out. So we are expecting to get ID, name, and account type. So let's do the full outer join for 3 tables. Here we are doing for 2 tables. Let's do for 3 tables. So remember that we have the users, accounts, and employees table. We are going to left join the 3 tables. So the way we are going to left join the 3 table is just, I'm going to copy the same thing we did here. I'll paste it here, and then inside there I'm going to join another column that I want us to retrieve, which is the address dot column dot address. This should be addresses, and then right here after left joining the accounts on users, we are going to also left join the address on the users by saying dot outer join, and then we are going to pass in the addresses, and we are going to create the on clause, which is users.c.id, which is the foreign key of their relationship. And then we are going to do the same for right join. I'm also going to call this right statement, and I'm going to copy this right statement that we, let me just paste this in, and the same way we are just only going to add the column from address that we want to get, which is the address column, and then at the end here we are going to join it to users by saying dot outer join, and we pass in the addresses, and then we pass in the on clause, which is the relationship between both of them, which is users ID, and the foreign key for the addresses, which is the user underscore ID. And then we are going to combine the results of the left and right outer join with union.all in order to make it a subquery, full subquery, and you say union all, and then I'll pass in the left statement again and the right statement, and say dot subquery, and then down here we are going to create a query of its own, a statement of its own, and then we say select, and then we pass in the full outer join subquery, and then also we say that this thing to prevent duplicate data, and then we are going to print it out, but I'm going to paste it in. So we are calling the connection.execute, and we are passing the full outer join statement, and then we are printing it out. So we are expecting an ID, name, account type, and address, which are the columns that we selected up here. So if we save and I open my terminal, and I'm going to run full outer join.py. And before I do this, I need to make sure to uncomment where we were dropping and creating tables. Where is db.engine? Right here. So we don't mistakenly drop the tables. So I'll save this, close it, and we are going to run this. So if you look here, this is where we are joining two tables, like from the left join and the right join. So let's see if there are something different. You see here, the IDs are listed, and for the first one, the left table, which is user, is present, the right table is present, until we get to the ID of 5, where we have the left table, which is where we have data present, but the right table is none, which is 7. And we see that both this row is printed, because the way full outer join works is, so far there is value in at least the left one or the right one is going to print them out. It's going to be retrieved, and you can see this place where we are having value in the left table, and it's still printing out the row. Assuming it was the left join, if it was the left join, so far we get to this point where there is no value in the user table. This row is not going to be printed, and this row is not going to be printed. If it was the right join, where we have no value in the right table, which is account, these two rows or these three rows are not going to be printed. So the full outer join is the combination of both left join and the right join. And down here, where we are combining three tables, we can see that we get user ID and username, and then we get the check-ins, which is the account type, and then we get the address. So in the same way, here we only have savings, but the row is still printed. Here we only have users, but the row is still printed. Here we have both users and address and no account, but the row is still printed. So let's look at self join. And so far, if you're still watching, just give me a like and let's continue. I mean, on the video. So I'm going to go to self join. In a relational database where you want to create a query where you want to reference the same table multiple times, which could throw an error, there is a way to be able to reference the same table in the same query without getting an error, and that is by creating an alias for that table name. That way, it would seem like the table is some kind of like bipolar. If you reference it by its original name, it would respond, and if you reference it by its alias name, it would also respond. So in a self-join, it is a must to reference the same table in the same query, and creating an alias for that table would ensure that we do not run into an error. In other words, for us to be able to do a self-join, we have to use the alias function from Sqlalchemy to be able to create an alias for a table that we want to reference. Because from what the name is self-join, it means you're referencing the same table. So for us to do that, we need to create a kind of table that allows self-join, and that table is going to be um, an employees table, and we're going to go to DB engine and we're going to add it here. I'm going to paste it in. So the employee table is going to have an ID, a column ID, and a column name, a column email, a column position, and then a column manager ID, which is going to serve as the foreign key for itself. So like this is going to be, the table is in such a way that, let's say we have two managers and two other employees, and the two managers are also employees, but we have to place every other employee under a particular manager. So these two other employees are going to have their manager ID set to the ID of the manager, and then the managers, their ID is going to be their manager ID is going to be set to the ID of the CEO. So the only person in this kind of table that is not going to have a manager ID is the CEO, because nobody is managing the CEO or the MD. So the managers will have their manager ID will be the ID of the CEO, and the other employees, their manager ID will be filled with the ID of the managers. So that's what this table is for. And also we need to create this table. And for us to create it, we are going to use this pattern where we can be able to create a single table by saying, passing that in the table name and then call create and then passing in the engine. And before I go ahead and do this, I'm going to need to add, we also need to add values to the table. So I'm going to say from db engine import all. So I'm going to paste this in so that we can be able to create this, add values to this table. So it means that I have to add employees here so we can be able to import it. And now it's highlighted. So I'm going to run this. Our table will be created and the values added to the table. This is self join. And the values are added. So I'm going to comment this out. I'll reload and you see the employees. So we have the employees, we have CEO, just like I explained before, we have the CEO with manager ID set to, why are they all set to no? Well, let me set them here. So the CEO is not going to have any manager ID, but this, the CTO and the manager are going to be managed by the CEO, and then both the CTO and the manager are going to manage the engineer. The engineer is going to be managed by the CTO, which is the ID of 2. That's what we add there. And the accountant is going to be managed by the manager, which has the ID of 3. That's what we add there. Say Control S, and it has been saved. So let's go on and start work. So just like I said before about the alias, we are going to first create an alias for the employees table, which is necessary for self-reference. So I'm going to call these managers, and to create an alias, we first state the table name and then call the alias function and then pass in what we want to create the alias as. I'm going to also call it managers. So this is now some kind of nickname and alias for this table. So we are going to perform a self join by combining the employees table with the alias table we just created. We are going to treat the managers table as a different one and the employees table as a different one, but we do know that they are both the same. So I'm going to call this statement 1. And then just like we've always been doing, we're going to say select, and then we pass in the employees table, employees, and then we pass in the managers, which we just created, which is an alias of employees that we are treating as a different table. And we say dot select from, and then we pass in the one that is going to be on the left, which is the employees, and we say dot join, and then we pass in managers, and then we say we are going to be passing in the clause which is employees.colon.id. This should be dot manager id, because we want to match it to the managers.colon.id. So this is the way we can do a self join. So here we are going to print it out by saying with my SQL engine.connect as con, then I'm going to create result1 and say con.execute, and then we are going to pass in the statement, and then we are going to print it out. So I need to also comment this part out again, and I'll close this, and let's first run this one. And this is self join. If I expand this, so we can see where we are printing it out. It says ID, which is the employee ID, employee name, employee email. Here the employee position, and here the manager ID. And then this is where the employee stops, and this is where the manager step started with the manager ID, and then manager name, manager email, and manager position, and manager ID. And this is the CEO, so he has no manager ID. So which means these are all the employees, and the only user that is the only employee that is not here is Johnson Bond, which is the CEO. So let's see how we can select the desired columns with no. Let's see how we can select the desired columns that we wish to return. So I'm going to call this statement 2. Like usual, we say select, and inside there we are going to pass in all the columns that we wish to return. We are still going to use this manager alias that we created of the employees table, and I'm going to say employees.column.id, and for us to select the particular column that we want to retrieve, when in a self join, we have to do it with a label, which is what Sqlalchemy is using to create an alias for each of the columns. So we say dot label, and then for each label we are going to pass in a unique name. I'm going to call it employee ID, and the same way we are going to do this for all the columns that we wish to select. And here I want to get the name. We create an alias as employee name, and here I want to get the position, so we change the alias as employee position, and here I want to get the manager's ID, and we are going to change it to manager ID. And the next one, I want to get the manager name. We're going to change this to manager name. Also here I want to get the manager position, and we are going to set this to manager position. And then we are going to say dot select from, and then we pass in employees dot join, and inside this join function we are going to also pass in the managers, which is the second table, and we enter the clause, which is employees.column.manager ID, and passing the other primary key, which is the managers.column.id, and we are going to print it out, which I'm going to copy this, share this to result 2, and so we are expecting to get employee ID, employee name, employee position, and manager ID, manager name, and manager position. So I'm going to clear, and we are going to run this again. So we see that we got employee, the ID, name, and position. So this is scattered there. Email is to position. Let me see. Okay, so this is supposed to be statement 2 because I copied it. So I'm going to clear and I'm going to run again. Yeah, so we see that we got the employee ID, name, position, and then is the manager for this employee, which is the CEO, and just to the end. Finally, we are going to create another self join and see how we can use it with the self clause. So what I'm going to do is this part that we created before, or I'm just going to come beside it, and okay, just for reference, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to come here. I'm going to call this the third one. And I'm going to come here, I'm going to add the where clause. So what do we want to pick? We want to pick where the employees dot column dot manager ID is equal to 1. So I'm going to clear. I'm going to run this again. We should just get, so see what we are getting. This employee, Jason Bond, the manager ID is 1, and this employee, Jen Dennis, the manager ID is 1. So something else, we're supposed to look at outer join, but the thing is that outer join is just a generic term that encompasses the left join, the left outer join, the right outer join, and the full outer join. And all of these, the left, the right, and the full outer, are all part of the outer join. So that is it for this video. The next one we are going to look at, let's say, table reflection using Sqlalchemy, and you're going to use that creating triggers and procedure using Sqlalchemy. So do not forget to subscribe to my channel if you're yet to do so, and like. Thank you for watching.